Today's June 16th. If you stayed up late Saturday night, I'm right there with you. Silver lining is that it only counts as one loss, and the Bucs won the series. Got a fun show tonight. Jim Stamm is here. You're listening to the Bridge to Buctober podcast. Yins, guys. Thank you for listening to the Bridge to Buctober podcast, where we talk all about them Pittsburgh Pirates and that. My name is Josh, and I'm joined this Father's Day Sunday by my friend Jim Stamm. What's up, Jim?
Much, man. I spent Father's Day at the ballpark with my son. He had a game. They didn't win, but Josh, you would have loved it, man. He first at bat, runners on second and third, hit a nice line drive in between short and third. He's lefty. So just how we always used, just how we used to do it in baseball, right?
That's
Go with
right.
the pitch if you can. But yeah, he had a good game. Just enjoyed having some family in town. I hope you had a good Father's Day, sir.
Yeah. We had a nice roast and mashed potatoes and gravy and all of that.
Oh.
And then watched the game, went for ice cream. Here we are. So yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I only got to see till about the fourth inning today, and then had to leave, and then checking the phone while I'm trying to keep score of a game. But
yeah, it got better after that.
Yeah, because right there I was, I think it was 1-0 at the time, and I'm like, man, I hope I don't leave and then come back and then they have lost this one. Because I think that Josh, I think this was a tipping point, I think, for people if they would have dropped 2 of 3 in that series. Don't you think?
Yeah, for sure.
It seemed like people were right on the edge of losing their, shiz if they would have dropped this series.
Yeah, and that's, I kind of mentioned it on Friday's show. This is also the team that went to Oakland and got swept. So, you know what I mean? It can happen. Sure. And it is frustrating at times. I think I sent something out saying when Majinski came in, 2 runners on, and we're sitting there we only got 1 run. And if you're going to win this game, a bullpen game at that, which was similar. And another one, we didn't have to score a lot to win a bullpen game, but you kind of felt like you're in Colorado, you've got to score runs to win. That's
Sure.
just the way it goes. And, they were able to hold them off and score runs. So good on them.
Well, who would have thought in that series where you have Jared Jones sandwiched in between 2 bullpen games that it would have fallen the way that it did. But nothing surprises me with these Pittsburgh Pirates, Josh. Nothing. So
That's fair. I did think it was interesting, and it does kind of speak this is still, I understand they're the Colorado Rockies. They're at the bottom of things. I get it. That's still a professional baseball team. That's still better than any AAA team you're ever going to play against, no matter what anybody wants to say for clicks on Twitter or whatever. And I really felt like the Pirates took them lightly. The fact that they said, you know what, we're moving Skeens, which I like for 2 reasons. I think you have to stretch those guys out and give them more rest. You're going to have to figure out a way to limit innings. But also, you've got the Reds coming, and we're going to, if we have time, we'll talk about the Reds and everything. And I mean, I would much rather have Skeens for the Reds than pitch him in Colorado. And you know what I mean? In a game that we could win with a bullpen game. The problem is going into that game saying that we're going to take this team so lightly that we think we can win a series with 2 bullpen games sometimes can kick you in the butt. You know what I mean? And make you pay for it.
No, absolutely. I think, yeah, it was a little I think it's a little presumptuous for the Pirates to assume anything, and I don't know that they were.
Right.
But it sure seemed like they were just trying to say, well, we think we can get by. Interesting thing, Colorado's not a good team, but every year, if you look at Colorado, they always play better at home. They always do. And so even after dropping these 2 of 3 to the Pirates, they're 14-19 at home. So essentially before this series, you're talking pretty much close to a 500 ball team in Colorado. So it's never easy there. And even when they're bad, they're decent at home.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yep. Well, we are going to get into, we'll talk a little bit more about these games as we talk through this, but we're going to talk catching, specifically Yasmani Grandal. And then we'll get into like the bullpen situation and why we're even doing that. And Luis Ortiz in specific. And then, like I said, if we've got time, Reds preview and anything else that we kind of rabbit trail ourselves into, because that's totally fine here.
Sure.
So,
sure. And hey, by the way, let's give Josh Fleming some credit today,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
I think he gave them even maybe more than they thought he would. And, this guy knows that he's been yanked around a little bit. And these types of games, that's just a huge effort from him. I think did we get 4 innings out of him today? I think we did.
Yeah. It was, let me grab it exactly. It was exactly 4. Majinski did start the 5th. So yeah, 4 innings. I was thinking that maybe, did he start and then Majinski come in?
I think it was Fleming that started.
Did he start the 5th is what I was thinking.
Oh, I don't know. I was gone by then.
Yes.
I was off to Little League.
He started the 5th, gave up a single to Nolan Jones, and Jake Cave singled. What is that? That's interesting that they gave me it says Nolan Jones singled, Jake Cave singles, Pittsburgh 1, Colorado 0. Why would you give me the score after no score? Maybe it just does that. Anyway, he faced 2 batters in the 5th and gave up 2 hits. Then they brought in Majinski, who got the double play that ended up being reversed. Or no, he did get the double play. And then he got the double play and then got a ground out. So yeah.
Okay.
So he got us 4 plus. Yeah, 4 plus at that. So, just to add to that. But good job by Majinski, too. I think he's starting to maybe, out of the 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe starting to turn a little bit of a corner, but it's not what we saw last year from Majinski.
Not at all.
No.
But, maybe as I think you're hinting is maybe like getting him into some more less high leverage and just letting him be able to sort through some things. It would be a good thing too. And that's the beauty of if you can get Holderman, Chapman, and Bednar going where you're not necessarily putting him in those situations.
Right.
So it's funny how all that kind of starts to fall in line a little bit more when guys start, fulfilling the roles that we think that we had in mind for them.
Yeah. But Majinski was in that group that we thought would help in those last 3 innings. So
yes,
it still is. I mean, the bullpen's we've all talked about it. So, But yeah,
I thought Fleming deserved a nice little shout out today because that was pretty instrumental.
Yeah, I mean, no walks. That's kind of the biggest thing, right? You can't give them free passes. Matter of fact, the Pirates did not walk anyone today.
Oh, really?
So,
it's funny in Coors Field. I think pitchers it's so funny because Coors Field makes you try to pitch more fine.
Yeah,
but it can end up backfiring on you, right? Because then all of a sudden, because you're trying really hard to stay off that plate, and then all of a sudden you do walk people, which makes it twice as worse. So that's the effect when you get there.
And that's exactly what happened to Jared Jones with the 4 walks on Saturday, and it's going to hurt you.
place gets in your head.
Yeah. And so whether it was Jones or whether it was Colorado or whatever, you know what I mean? I mean, you watched Greg Brown was a little concerned about the velocity. His velocity was barely different. Average velocity was only down a half a mile per hour from his season average. So I wasn't as concerned with that. The spin rate was quite a bit lower, which resulted in the movement being an inch or two off on a couple of his pitches. And so once you go there, now it starts to make sense. Well, yeah, that slider is better than his fastball as far as what it's been lately. And it didn't have the same movement.
Yeah,
the fastball didn't have the carry either. It was his fastball vertical had dropped in that game as well. So the speed wasn't much different. The spin was different, which didn't give it that same carry. It was dropping a little more, and usually it just misses over those bats. And so when you see something like that, like I said, I don't know if that's a Colorado thing or if he just didn't have it. But if he comes back and pitches well his next outing, we'll blame it on Colorado because we can.
I will. I tell you what, it scared the crap out of me when they ran out there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was like they saw one pitch at like 94 or 95 miles an hour, and they were out there asking him, which I understand. But it seemed to me like Jared Jones was like, I'm fine. Like, there's nothing going on. But boy, that puts a pit in your stomach as soon as you see that.
Did you hear Shelton's comment at the end of the game?
No.
It was a slip. So it wasn't even arm related. They went out there because they thought he slipped or something. And they wanted to check on that. At least that's what he said. So
yeah, I didn't pick up on that at the time, but okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It seems fine.
Yeah, I didn't
but
either.
I will tell you, Josh, I am curious to see him next start because, he hasn't been as sharp. Mm-hmm. The Dodgers game, he looked really good. But around that, and look, this is just the ups and downs, I think, of someone's rookie season.
100%.
And he's thrown a lot of pitches, a lot of innings. And but again, next start, I'm hoping we see him bounce back a little too.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, so Henry Davis was removed from a game Friday night with concussion-like symptoms. Jason DeLay right away was on his way. They did move Davis to 7-day IL. DeLay recalled, hit a big double in the game today. Really just kind of broke it open. And we'll get into a little bit of those guys as we talk about catching, but you had said, I don't know if I put the quote, I have a bunch of notes. You had said something about Yasmani Grandal, and you called me out specifically.
Which I do. Whenever I want to know something on a deep dive, you're the first person that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So,
I guess called me out in a good
worse.
way, right? So yeah, not like, hey, this idiot. But you said I'd like him to look some things up.
Listen, usually I call people out on the Jaggies, so that's how I do it. But no, this was a cry for help, Josh.
Yeah. And it was based around the Pirates' record at the time was 15-5. I believe at the time that you had made the comment, 15-5 when Grandal was catching.
Or 15-6 maybe, but point being,
okay, yeah,
they've won a lot of the games he has started.
Yeah, it is 15-8 now. But and I'm sure that these numbers will be different today. But I did look all of this up yesterday before the late night game. So that 16-run game, not on these numbers, which probably might weigh into some of this. But anyway, I did look up some stuff, and I kept going one way and another way and trying to figure out, is it smoke and mirrors? Is it
happenstance?
Right.
Basically,
is it who he's catching? Is it the run support? All of that stuff. And I have, if you're on video, you're going to see, I have literally every game, like wins and losses. And like, I'm just starting to go down the rabbit hole here. So
spew some numbers, what did you find interesting?
So let's start with the guys that he's catching. Jones is 2-2 when he catches him. And in the other games, Jones is, and I don't want to say Jones is, right? But the team when Jones is pitching with Grandal starting. And these are all his starts, not necessarily if he gets in late. These all are just his starts. So there's a little bit of, there could be some imperfections in here, but Jones, the team is 2-2 when that is combined. And the team is 3-6 when he's not catching Jones. The team's 2-1 when he's catching Bailey Falter, 5-6 when he's not. Quinn Priester, that's all zeros with the win column. We have not won a game. The team is 0-6 in Priester starts. Paul Skeens 4-0 with Grandal catching, 1-1 without. Mitch Keller 5-1 and 3-4 when it's not Grandal. Martin Perez, he only caught him once, and they won that game, 3-7 otherwise. And then the bullpen game, there's been 2 of them that he caught with the Majinski-Ortiz type thing, and it's 1-0 and 1-0. He caught one, he didn't catch one, and they won both of those games. And that was Friday night, right? That was the second one. So I don't have Saturday's game in there, but that would be another Jared Jones loss. He would drop to 2-3 there. Or the team would in that sense. So either way, that tells the same kind of story though. That's wins and losses. So what goes into it? ERA 3.75 with Grandal, 3.95 with all the other catchers. Not a huge difference, but it is a difference. Batting average 244, 243. To make this go faster, I'll say the Grandal numbers first and then everyone else after.
Okay.
On base percentage 310, 314. Slugging 399, 394. OPS, that's a 709 and a 708. Whip 1.256, 1.284. Ks per 9, 8.7 to 8.5. Walks per 9, 2.8. That's not right. I wrote 8.7, but that can't be right. Walks per 9 cannot be 8.7. I still have that here. Hang on. Walks per 9, 2.8 to 3.2.
Maybe you were just looking at Chapman's walks per 9.
That could be, but it's 3.2, and just it doesn't matter. I'm not going to use this after this, so I'm still going to update my notes here just in case I ever look back at this. So anyway, all the numbers they do go up, but not by enough to say, oh, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that to me is pretty negligible across the board. And I mentioned this on our show the other day, which was like you always saw with Yachty or Molina when they would show this, right? Like the way he could call a game and handle it and whatever. And the huge differences when he was not doing it.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that win-loss record, that was my first thought with Grandal. I was like, is there really something that he's doing? Because he's not like there's been this weird thing lately that like the Pirates are somehow valuing Yasmani Grandal's defensive prowess or his catching prowess. He's never been that. So I was questioning where that narrative was coming from. And that seems to tell me, Josh, that that's a little bit of a myth, right?
Well, there are some things that I don't think that you'll see on the stat sheets, right? That I've heard from some other ones, from some people here and there, and that is game plan and pregame stuff. I've also heard though that he is very active in the game plan when other catchers are catching too. So he's just really active in the game planning in general. So there could be some benefit
carryover
that's built into his game that also, work both ways. So, but that doesn't play to the win-loss when he's not. You know what I mean? That's just speaking to maybe some of his value, some of his maybe rapport with the pitchers and certain things like that. He knows the game plan. However, I will question this weekend why they weren't throwing all fastballs to McMahon in that specifically Saturday when, you know, you would think that Grandal would be the one that would be on top of that if anybody was going to be.
You would think. I will say, you know, I think the thing is with veteran catchers is they just have a much better feel for the game as the game is going on. That's the thing about catching is there's so many elements to it that people don't realize, and that you can go into a game thinking one thing, and as a catcher, you are looking at so much with even the guy that's in the box with you batting and seeing what you're seeing and how that can change from what you thought you were going to do at the beginning of the game to how you start attacking him as the game is going on. And then it changes by who's the pitcher on the mound and so on and so forth. So, you know, the numbers are interesting, and I think they help us sort through it. But at the end of the day, there's so many things that we don't have that information. We're not privy to certain things. So anything else that you got from the Grandal thing? Was there any?
Yeah. And just to take a second here, Ryan, Bucko, Mike, Sherrod, Ron, all these guys in the chat right now. Appreciate you guys. Keep it coming.
Good to see you, fellas.
Yeah, I'll get to some of that too. But I went offensively a little bit too. And to see, like, okay, the Pirates average 4.8 runs per game when he's in the lineup and 3.7 when he's not. I still think it's just like, yes, that's significant. I always talk about 4 runs. If you score 4 runs, you're going to win more games than you lose. That's actually proven out every single year. It's never been not proven out. Like, I guess if you have a really terrible, I guess the Rockies would probably be an exception to that. You know what I mean? Because of how many runs can be scored at Coors, but
there are outliers. I mean,
yeah. But generally, you average 4 runs a game, you're going to win more games than you lose.
And especially for a team like the Pirates, the way they're constructed this year, it's such a they'd like to make that 10 hit mark. 10 hits. I mean, what are those hits? You know, as to whether you're winning or losing, it's just really, are you pushing 4 runs across the board or not? And the more you do that, the more chance of success you have, especially with this Pirates team.
Yeah. I think defensively, blocking, catching the ball in general, to be honest with you, I've been really underimpressed with Grandal. Obviously, the steal of home, the lazy throw, or I don't want to even say lazy, like the careless throw back to the pitcher. He's throwing over top left-handed hitters is what he's doing. And he just doesn't, like, how do you not pay attention to that? And he owned up to it. So it's kind of one of those things that, like, it's going to happen to you, and then it's like, that can't happen again. It should never have happened the first time.
You want to talk about baseball being a humbling game? My goodness, it was so embarrassing. Well, first of all, that game in general was just such a disaster. Like, everything was a disaster. But the Grandal thing sticks with you because, like you said, that just cannot happen. And credit to the Rockies, by the way, and that third base coach of picking up on that, and he could have crawled home.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's how bad it was. Like, I mean, it didn't even get a throw back from Jones because
he was one step from the plate. Yep. By the time he caught the ball.
But yes, it cannot happen. Should have never happened. And I guarantee you Grandal will never forget it. So,
yeah. Well, then it was funny that he checked the runner back later in the game and then couldn't, and then just like almost threw it away.
Yes.
As far as pitch framing, there is a lot to like. It's better. I looked at called strikes on pitches out of the zone. His percentage is a full % above the next guy, which is Joey Bart. Called strikes in the shadow, which is kind of like just a little off the edge, a little on the edge on the plate. It's technically it's delay, but like you're talking about a difference between 60 pitches and and 1,486 pitches. You know what I'm saying? So, so it's 21.9%. Joey Bart's close to that, but it's not there. And that kind of tells you, is he stealing one that's just off, but also is he getting the one that's just on? And I think a lot of that is kind of here. Called balls in the shadow, Joey Bart, 27.5% of balls in the shadow. Now, once again, those could just miss or not, but just to kind of give you that called strikes out of the zone in general, Yaz, 5.7%. That's 1,719 pitches thrown out of the zone, and he's gotten 98 of them. But Davis, 1,734 pitches out of the zone, so more, and he's only gotten 59 of those. So, I mean, that's a huge thing for Davis there. 3.4% stealing that strike that's off the plate. Now, once again, I like to call out all the things that's like, oh, that's so, his might have been further away. You know what I mean? So there's some of that. In the shadow, it's not as terrible of a difference. But it is still a difference. It goes from 21.9% to 20.1%, and stuff like that. Called balls in the zone and the shadow. So this is actually, it was an actual strike, but it was close to the edge. How many of those did you not get? Because I think they say a lot of framing is less about stealing a strike and more about getting the ones that should be. Joey Bart.
I think people do forget that too. They get very fixated on the ones that are balls and you're getting called for strikes.
Yeah.
As if that's all that framing is. And that's really just, I don't know, half the equation. So.
Yeah. And that's Joey Bart actually 4.2%. And these are just very small numbers, but that's because most time you're getting your strike. But Yaz is at 3.6%. Henry at 4.1. So there is a little bit of like, he's making sure that they do get their, that they get their strikes, or that they get their strikes, because there's a lot less balls that are being called on pitches over the plate. StatCast has some numbers on this. As far as framing, it's a run value number, so it's 3. It's small at this point in the season or whatever. It's an 86th percentile. So all of those things that I said, I did look, and I'm not going to go into big time detail with this, but one thing I noticed, you can actually look at, you know what? Do I still have that pulled up? Because anybody that's watching live or watching the video, if I share this, I think you can kind of see this. There might be some of it that's missed off to the side. No, it looks like we got it all. This is this year for him, and I'm looking at basically, this is for those of you in audio, I'm looking at a list, and it's just framing, and it looks at all the zones that are just the shadow around the plate, and it gives you a number of, basically it gives you their strike rate. And then if in StatCast, if it's blue, it's bad. If it's red, you're better than most. And you can see there are 2 zones, up and glove side high, that's blue, and glove side, it like inside. The bottom corner he's good at, but it looks like he's missing. That's a high percentage because you should get a lot of these, right? It's glove side. You should get a lot of these. But he's really good in the corners, except for that top glove side corner, which I thought was pretty interesting. That actually came into play on Saturday, where it looked like there were some calls that the ump was pretty good on the, would be outside corner to a righty. He was pretty good there until Ke'Bryan Hayes at bat with 2 guys on. There was a pitch way outside, rung him up for strike 3. And when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, but has he been calling that all game? And no, he wasn't. He wasn't calling it all game. And somehow, you know, that was I consider that a really badly missed call, where if you see an umpire on the outside edge given a little bit there, then I would say protect. You got to swing at it.
Sure.
But in that case, it was kind of interesting. But I have noticed, like, that's kind of where his strength is. I would pitch to that strength maybe a little bit if you can. So I don't really know. But either way, those were basically all the numbers I looked up. And there is value there. He is better than average at certain things. but I don't see where it's made that big of a difference other than like the fact that the ERA is close to the same and we've scored more runs. And I don't even feel like he's contributed to the scoring more runs much.
Well, yeah. And so first of all, you did make a very good point, and I do want to touch on this again, which is you said if he is having a lot of input into whenever he's not catching and still how they're attacking guys, that is something that I think I hadn't really thought of, and I'm quite sure other people aren't either. Now, the big question to me is, if he's in the lineup offensively, don't they need to be getting something more out of him? Like, because he's gone full Austin Hedges.
It's pretty
at
close.
The plate. And you see someone like DeLay come up, and part of me thinks, well, hell, Jason DeLay can give you at least, I mean, yes, Grandal has a little pop, but I think Jason DeLay is somebody that can give you just as good of an at-bat at times, I mean, Josh, do you think is this just him now at this age hitting, or is there something a little bit more there?
I don't think so. I mean, he hasn't had 10 home runs since he hit 23 in 2021. So, I mean, he hasn't had, a ton of at-bats either, but he hit in 118 games last year, which is a significant workload for a catcher the way they use him now. And he still had 8 home runs. So, I don't see that. I'm trying to look like as quick as I can. I don't see, just on MLB, I was looking to see if they showed runners in scoring position and stuff like that, because I don't want to pull up anything other than what I already have up. So I don't really see that, but like, I don't know if there's anything there. I mean, maybe it's just, I don't want to pretend that he's making a big difference offensively. I don't know if he gives good at bats and maybe at length. I just feel like it's probably just like you said, it's happenstance is what I can imagine. Hey, Ron Heichel brings up a good point here in the chat. That one thing's missing is throwing guys out. We've seen this before, right? With the Barajas and whatever season, but we're about to play the Reds, and I believe he brings that up too. Yeah, we're about to play the Reds, and these guys run all over the place, and I can't imagine. I was surprised. Skeens has a really good move. He might be able to hold some guys on with that, but outside of that, I mean, none of our catchers really.
It's almost a point where I don't even consider it, Josh, because they're just not very good at it.
Right.
So across the board, we're not going to control anybody's running game.
Yeah. His pop time, by the way, throughout his career has been bad.
Yeah. He's never been known to be someone that can do that. But that is an excellent point, because the Reds run on everybody and they don't stop. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they get caught some, but they're running enough to make up for it. Yeah. So
maybe that's actually a good point. Maybe even if we had a good one, it wouldn't matter. They're going to run anyway.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the best way to attack it is not to let them on.
Yeah.
And depending on who we have pitching, obviously we might be able to control that a little bit more. But I shudder to think 6 of the next 9 games are against the Reds. And if I was the Reds, I would be certainly looking to, expose that even more if I'm them.
Yeah,
so
I think so.
I just feel like with Grandal at this point, like, he's not even striking out a lot at the plate. It's just that, there's nothing really coming from him other than maybe a single here or there. Yes, he hit a couple home runs, I think, early in the season. And just a lot of rolling the ball over to second base type at bats. I just, man, it's getting so frustrating that position has become such a problem for them.
Yeah.
Especially given what they've tried to put into it, either from draft picks to signings, and it's the new first base for the Pirates offensively.
While they still have first base, though.
Right.
It's not like they got rid of first base and now it's catching.
Yes. Yeah. Connor Joe makes us feel a little better over there, but even so.
And that's flip-flopped recently, right? If you look at the numbers recently, you'd want Tellez out there every day. Connor Joe has been scuffling for about a month now. It's been bad. He needs to take a series off. Hit the reset button. I would still use him as a pinch hitter late because I think he's still good for that. But man, the numbers are bad. Yeah, I don't know if you've looked at him recently.
No, but nothing you're saying is surprising me. I was hoping he was going to get off a little bit in Colorado.
Yeah.
Just, but
last 7 games, he's hitting 148, 207 on base. Last 15, 182, 274. And last 30, 233, 308. So that's okay, right? Last 30, that's what I'm saying. There's still some good stuff that's not that far away. But like we're looking at 2 weeks now of under 200 and just the one home run. And I just and now they're starting to figure it out. He hasn't walked in his last 7 games. And they're just throwing it by him. And it's, like I said, I still think it's there. We know about Connor Joe. If he gets overexposed, it can be too much. If he just takes a series off, I think that just hitting a reset button, and like I said, I'd still use him late for pinch hit, but it's hard. You got Lodolo going in this series. I don't know that you want to sit him out against Lodolo and put Tellez out there, but I'm just saying that might be something they're going to have to consider to get him back because it's been that bad. And on the flip side, Tellez's numbers in the last 7 games, he's hitting 400 on base at 444. And in the last 15, 306, 346. It's still not enough power for me. I still need him to hit home runs. I would take less average if it meant home runs, but he is driving in runs, and that counts for something. I don't know that Tellez is even the rest of this season kind of an answer, but as of like, hey, right now, it's kind of hard.
Well, I mean, you've waited this long on him. You might as well, when he does start to show that he's hitting, you got to play him. I don't disagree with you on Connor Joe. I think I would I think I would definitely make sure he's in there against lefties, obviously still.
Right.
But if there's a tough righty and you can find a way to get him a breather, I think it's a good time to do it. We're not that far off from the midway point of the season. And he's on pace. Connor Joe's got to be on pace for his most at-bats in his career, I would think.
He's got to be certainly close to it.
Yeah.
And he's earned that.
Absolutely. And I think they had to do this. They just couldn't have. You play him until he shows he can't handle it, on a daily basis. They were so starved for offense, and he was giving them some. So there's no criticism here for me on that, how they've done it. It's just, sometimes guys just need a break. And he might be due for one.
Mm-hmm. So I just to kind of wrap up the catching conversation, and maybe this moves us into less than Grandal and maybe more even Davis. You guys even brought up, automatic ball strike system and getting the robot umpires and how that changes the catching position and what you're going to look for. And you guys didn't go into that a little bit. And I was like, man, I really think that's interesting because I think that it's the challenge system that will come when it comes. So framing will still be somewhat important. You're not going to challenge every one of them. The close ones you may not want to challenge. I think getting those strikes is still going to be important, the ones you should get. So I think there is still some benefit to to framing and stuff. But the kind of stuff that Grandal might be good at, which is the game planning, working with the pitcher throughout his start, and kind of that, I think those things are still going to be extremely valuable. I think you'll still find that the future managers are going to be catchers because of those sort of qualities. But it's not going to be like you're not going to want a guy who's all framing and nothing else. You know what I'm saying? He's going to still he's going to have to block, which Grandal doesn't do well. He's going to have to throw people out, which Grandal doesn't do well. And it starts making me think about Davis, and I'm not sure that that's still like, it seems like, oh, well, all we got to do is get robot umps in there and Davis is going to be fine. My problem with Davis is I feel like there's so much effort into catching and calling a game and game planning. I think his hitting is lacking because of that. But I thought it was interesting. If you think that pitch framing, the way that I just kind of said it, if you think it's going to die, or if you think there still will be value in that sort of way, or do you think the challenge is going to be so good? Because if AAA players are hit and miss, but mostly right, imagine the best, like Brian Reynolds will never be wrong on a challenge. He knows the zone.
Yes. Hutch, Reynolds, those types of guys. And it's funny because I do think of Brian Reynolds, he just can't force himself to swing at it. Like he it's so ingrained in him that he's right. Yeah. That to make that decision in a millisecond, he cannot do it. And that's why I do think sometimes it's very easy to say, well, you got to protect. I agree, but think about the time that you have to protect in that fraction of a second. Yeah. When you've been trained your whole life to trust what you're seeing, right? And know that you know the strike zone. I think it is going to be the challenge system is going to be what you're going to see. And then it is still going to matter. The framing's still going to matter. I don't see them going to this completely automated zone strike zone thing. From my understanding, Josh, and maybe if you've read something on it recently, but like it's still not perfect. Like they can't, like there's too many problems with it. And maybe someday they'll be able to get to that point. But I think that they can go the happy medium route here and do it where you're still being able to challenge things. And it should help the product. I think it will. I have heard though that there's been a lot of problems that they can't quite get the technology to be accurate enough to. You're talking O'Neal Cruz size guys, Jose Altuve size guys, three-dimensional box, all this stuff. So, have you seen anything lately on that? Because last thing I read was it's still a ways off.
Yeah, I think that I think even Manfred said that 2025 it won't be ready. There is something about last time I read something, they were talking about how to me it sounds so bizarre, but you get quote unquote like fitted, right? You go in to a room and they say, we're going to essentially program your strike zone, get in your batting stance, and you get in your batting stance and they program your strike zone. If you change your batting stance, well, now you've got to go get programmed again. So like, what is there going to be like, 3-4 days before you get to do that? Or do you have to wait till you're back at your home? You can't change your batting stance on the road because they can't fit you, or like how quickly does that happen? There's stuff like that. And so I think there's some things like that they're still working out, but it's been a minute.
You gave me an idea. Henry Davis. What we do is we take this scrunched stance of his, and every other at bat, he stands up like Cody Bellinger. And then the next at bat, he goes back down into his little crouch. And then voila, Henry Davis can be successful again.
And I think that's exactly why they're saying until we can do it on the fly. I don't know. But then again, also, if you do that, I think it's in like, I think if you do that, I don't know what the umpire is going to call. You know what I mean? Because I think it's like the way you're naturally standing in there is your strike zone. So I don't know how you would even call that. I think if you crouch down real low, they're just still going to call you for like a general.
Yeah.
height.
Yeah. How does that work?
So then I guess they would just say, no, you have to do like a standard. I don't know. That's actually interesting. This is why they don't have it down, I would say, right?
There's probably 1,000 things that we don't even think of that come into play with it. So, I'll be honest. I hate the framing. I hate stealing strikes. I think it's not my thing. I would much rather than be able to get an accurate strike zone. It shouldn't be about deception all the time. Like, we shouldn't just be trying to trick umpires.
Yeah.
And I wish that they would just honestly, I know they can't do this. I would get rid of the framing in general. I think it's a disruption to the game. I think it causes a lot of fans to get frustrated watching games. Hitters hate it, but it's everything now with catching. Like that is what catchers are there to do first and foremost.
Yeah.
Is frame, steal strikes.
Yeah. Step one is get that box off the TV too.
That would help.
Because I think then we would also be fooled. And I think there's something to be said about like, oh, that's a strike. But like if there's a box there, you don't want the strike. You already know it's not a strike or it is a strike. And you didn't get or got the call. And you know what I mean? And so it's like now you're mad instead of just like, oh, I wanted that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's interesting because like watching baseball, you know, even like when I was young, I mean, Glavine had a bigger strike zone because he quote unquote earned it. And at the time I was like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And then now I'm kind of like, that doesn't make sense. That if a guy's better, he doesn't need help. And yet like, you know, guys like Glavine, Maddox and Pedro, and like they all got, as the game went on, if they were going good, it kept stretching and stretching and stretching. And yeah, I don't know. Then again, everybody else was on roids. So maybe it evened it out.
Yeah, that's another topic. I would say this is all I want from baseball umpires anymore is okay, you're going to call a game a certain way. I get it, right? Just the consistency has to be there. And that is the biggest problem, Josh, that I see anymore is like, fine, you're going to call, if you decide that pitches away 2 inches, 3 inches off the plate are strikes, that is fine. You've established that early on in the game. Hitters have to adjust to that. But then you're giving it 2 to 3 inches on the other side of the plate. And then the next inning, that other pitch that was a strike isn't like, that is to me is like, just be consistent. Consistent. If you squeeze pitchers, fine, be consistent with it. If you're going to give a wide strike zone on one side of the plate, call it every time. Yeah. And that's where we've lost, like that to me is where we've derailed completely, is like there's no consistency. And I don't know if it's because catchers have gotten so good at framing that it's confusing the umpire even more when he's trying to be consistent. But that is all I want, is just whether it's consistently good, bad, whatever, just call it the same way. And I think a lot of people could accept it more if we just had that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, you that's like when you take an at bat, it's one thing to get a bad call on you. It's whenever you have no idea what to expect the next at bat. And then you're trying to cover 3 inches wide on each side, up, down, you have no clue. So yeah. Anyways, that's my big rant on catching for the day, but and umpires in general. But you want to move on to something like some Luis Ortiz stuff?
Yeah, I do.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, we're kind of wrapping up here, but That's also, I just want to say, that's probably the most I've ever talked catching. So that's good.
Hey, I think it was perfect timing because the people start to throw out stuff, and without looking at it, we're all just guessing about it. So thank you for doing the research. I appreciate it, bud.
Yeah. So we have a bullpen game on Friday where Luis Ortiz came in. We had one. It was a Saturday game. I was there for the other bullpen game. And Luis Ortiz has now given us two really good outings, I guess. I mean, not starts, right? But outings in these bullpen games. And let me see here. He's got 4 1/3, just 3 hits, no runs. And then Friday night, 5 full innings. He did give up a run, but it was, I mean, they're good outings. The strikeout's not big, but he had the 1 walk in the game where he only gave up 3 hits. He had no walks the other day. And also 58 pitches in the first one, 69 pitches in the second one. He's now sitting at a 2.51 ERA.
And check out that whip, big boy.
Right. Let me actually get it. 1.16.
Yeah, that's what got my attention with Luis Ortiz.
So we're not seeing the Luis Ortiz who bursted onto the scene, right? He's got 33 strikeouts in 43 innings, but obviously you said like the 1.16 whip. He's been effective recently in a role where he's doing more of a bulk type pitching. And I think he had 58 pitches back April 24th. He went 2 2/3, hit 2 guys, walked 2 guys, struck out 4, gave up a run, and that was a 58 pitch outing. Okay. And then there was another 2 inning outing where he had 5 strikeouts, where it was 48 innings on May 15th, where both of those against Milwaukee, they were. That's interesting. So like there's been some outings where he got up into the 40s and that one in the 50s, but it was more or less not a good outing. And now you see 36 in a 3 innings against Toronto, and then 58 pitches against the Twins, and then now 69 in this game Friday night. When do you say, hey, let's go ahead and give him the ball to start the game?
Man, this is I think it's tricky, Josh. My big hesitation with that is he's doing so well in this role, and it is as we have just seen with how they're doing some of this stuff and how they're going to have to manage some of these innings as we go with other guys as the season drags on. It's tempting. But I'm almost err on the side of caution with him. I think it's been a long road to get him to this point. I would be a little concerned about just putting him back in that starter role. I know it's tempting. You could probably talk me into either situation, and I'd be okay with it. It's just where I'm landing at right now with him. What do you think? Because
so Jake texted me this, right? And I had kind of already been thinking this, and we have a group chat that I had kind of thrown this out in, like, hey, I think my line was like, he's going to mess around and get himself a start here pretty soon. And, but Jake texted me and said, hey, when do we do this? When are we looking at this? I think he needs to get an opportunity. If Martin Perez is not going to come back, instead of doing a straight up bullpen game, let's just give him the ball and just say, you're the guy now that'll get this start. And it was very similar to what you just said. I said, don't fix what ain't broke. And I almost wonder if it's a mindset thing. Starting up, Majinski's actually been all right. I think with Fleming here, if you could do Fleming 3 and then give the ball to Ortiz and see how that goes whenever he runs into trouble. You know what I mean? Like you're starting to say like he's thriving in a specific role.
Mm-hmm.
You could give him the ball as like a, hey, you've done good, so let's do it. One of the things I said is maybe I have more confidence in a relief pitcher throwing 1 to 2 innings until he runs into trouble and bringing in Ortiz to fix it than I do Ortiz running into trouble and bringing in a middle reliever to try to get him out of trouble. Majinski did do a good job of that today with Fleming out there. He got 2 guys on, and Majinski came out and kept the runs from scoring. So, kudos to him there, and then win another inning. So I'll give you that. Kyle Nicholas probably going to be used in that sort of role. If he can continue to throw strikes, I think that guy's going to stick around. But as far as Ortiz, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm really cautious to go there, especially because if you could just do it this way until you get Perez back, then you don't have to worry about like, oh yeah, we were only doing that now, and then you're right back to the bullpen.
Yeah, I think if Perez can come back and then he doesn't look right or just continues to look like he had, then I think you might discuss that.
Yeah.
But, I look at Ortiz and I'm thinking, first of all, look, his last 15 innings, this is the key to with Luis Ortiz. Last 15 innings, Josh, 1 walk.
Yeah.
Last 15 innings pitched. The other thing he's doing, 43 innings on the year, he's given up 1 home run.
Yeah.
So I hate to mess with that. I really do. I think the days of him pumping high 90s, he's the one guy that it seemed to has actually helped the without the velocity. He's not doing what he did when he first came up.
Yeah.
He seems to have adjusted to that. I do wonder the longer you'd let him go in games, how much that would play as he has to go in games, because he doesn't get strikeouts. He's not really doing the strikeout pitching anymore to get out of some of those jams that you eventually find yourself in at some point, right? You've got certain points of the game where as a starter, you're going to need to get a strikeout. And I don't know that fits him right now. So the more I talk about it, the more I guess settled in I am right now. Let Perez come back. Let him jump back into what he was doing. You don't have to mess with Ortiz. Then if things go south from there with Perez, then maybe I'd reevaluate. I think I'd keep it.
Yeah. And you also could say, you mentioned, talking about maybe some innings and maybe protecting some guys. So there is a consideration of saying like, well, if Jones or Skeens, if you're going to say like, hey, 3 innings tonight, we're gonna really pull it back in a way to, I don't know what that looks like or when that's going to happen and when we're all going to be mad when it does, but he would be the guy that would step into a role that way. I don't know how long Perez is not going to be here, or Priester or whatever. I mentioned earlier we haven't won a game that Priester's pitched. I still think that Priester's getting better, but this is going to be a setback. I don't know. I don't want to go into Priester, but
Perez, last I heard though, is close though, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's what I heard. He's close, but I actually thought, would he be back in Colorado? And it didn't seem like that was the case. So, but maybe I was
that's
just
a tough
here.
one though, isn't it? Well, no matter who it is that who you really want to give your first start? Is where you want to give someone their first start back,
right?
On they probably didn't want to do that if they didn't have to. So
yeah.
But yeah, I give a lot of credit to Luis Ortiz because I was really questioning what kind of role he was going to have moving forward. And he really just seems, and here's the other fact of the matter, Josh, some of these guys, maybe he likes this role. Maybe this is something that he has taken to. And that could be a factor too.
Yeah.
For how they want to use him.
Yeah. Cher dropped it in the chat. Same sort of thing. Ortiz is embracing it and it looks like he's enjoying it. And it seems like it's definitely fitting for him. He's having success. I don't know why you wouldn't enjoy having success. So maybe that has something to do with it. But But yeah, I think I'm okay staying put right now as well. But if they need to do this a couple more times and he starts getting stretched out further and further, I wonder what it'll look like. I honestly, it's funny, we get hung up on the way that they word things, right? And when does the opener / bullpen game become sort of like a piggyback scenario with maybe Fleming and Ortiz, who might be able to get you through a whole game, or at least to the last couple of innings, just the two of them. Like I said, 3 innings, 4 innings, and all of a sudden you only have 2 innings for your bullpen because you were able to do the piggyback on that one. So, I mean, I think it's a viable option going into the Tampa series, that they could use those two to actually save the bullpen instead of, in a way.
Yeah, I think whenever it goes according to plan, it's great.
So far, it has. We've been spoiled.
Yeah, but then you try that stuff in July and August when guys are already kind of, your bullpen already starts to get a little thin, a little tired. Yeah, and then you have 1 or 2 games like that in a row. It can set you back a week or two with availability, effectiveness, calling guys up and down and whatever. So it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's there's a fine line between brilliance and stupidity, I guess. And they got away with it this week in Colorado, which is a hell of a place to try that, by the way. So yeah. So anyways, I will say, the biggest thing for me is watching how they're going to manage some of these guys' innings as we keep going here. Because I think it is going to be really, really tricky. Yeah. I really do. Especially, what are they, one game out of a wild card spot right now, and all of a sudden, if you're in that in September and you're trying to manage innings, how's that all work?
I'm going to go back to, and we got to wrap this up here. I want to get you out of here, but I want to go back to saying, like, if you go back, and this is me, I know that there are some other numbers that have been thrown out there. The reaction right now to this sport is so NFL, and it drives me nuts. Like, we can't literally watch a game and freak out when we're losing. Like, that's not how baseball works. So what? You lost 16 to whatever. It just doesn't, like, it's one loss. It doesn't, you won the series. So yes, you got blasted one game. You had an embarrassing steal of home. You had some misplays on defense. And guess what? You got one loss for it and you won a series. Technically still, that's a good series. I know that game was sandwiched in there, but that's not baseball. And I think that we react so crazily sometimes to these losses that we're really the only ones. And then they say, like, oh, there's no emotion. Shelton's not mad about this. He should be fired up. They should be sending guys home. And it's like, but Shelton, one of his good qualities is, and we talked about this on the show a week or two ago, is he never gets too high. He never gets too low. He takes things in stride. And in a baseball season, that's actually a good quality. I think at times it can get you, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we can't get that hung up on a blowout game that really, it gives you the same loss as 4-3. And so, it sucks. But like, once it gets that far, I'm laughing. I'm more tense in a 5-3 game than I am in a 16-3 game. Cause I'm like, listen, I even said before the Grand Slam, I said, Santana's got the rest of this game. And it could get very ugly, but you cannot sacrifice tomorrow for a game that felt like it was already over. And I know some people say you should try to win every game. That's honestly, sometimes you have to lose a battle in order to win a war. And you knew you had a bullpen game coming the next day. The inning was always going to be, he was going to go out there until he couldn't throw anymore. Like, until it was like, okay, enough's enough. And then it would be Rowdy Tellez finishing the game. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
right.
That's where you're going to go with that. And then he gave up the grand slam, and I'm like, don't pull him out. That's a knee-jerk reaction that you can't afford to do because you've got other games coming, and you have to. That's what managing is. You know, sometimes you have to say, our offense has to win this one today. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the pitching.
I agree. I think the thing that now, if people want, I agree with you totally on, look, the losses like that, it's ugly. It's going to happen. What I don't like to see is sloppiness in them. Like that's my thing. If you're gonna get your ass beat, that's fine.
Yeah.
So when people like I think that's I tend to joke too. When the game gets out of hand, you'll see my Twitter account turns into it's let's just have some fun with it because it's absurd.
Yeah.
That being said, I do get upset with the base running mistakes, like things like that, or the Grandal situation, something like just play some decent baseball. If you get beat, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's the only way I'd split hairs there is I don't like to see the complete clown show stuff.
So I'll give an example too in that game, because obviously the Grandal stuff happened before it was really a blowout too. So that True. Kind of really kind of catapulted it to a certain degree. But there was a ball hit down the line, and the game had already started to get out of hand. There was a ball hit down the line, Olivares running down after it, and I looked at Katie stayed up late and watched the game with me that night, and I looked over and I was like, I'm telling you right now, that ball's in the corner. It feels, and Colorado's a big outfield. That ball feels so far away from you as a right fielder. If it's a 2-1 game, you're like, I got to get there. This is a big play. When you're getting crushed, that ball feels like it's a mile away. And it really is. I said, I literally said to her, I was like, it is really difficult to go after that ball. I mean, it wasn't a catch, right? It was a ground ball or whatever. It wasn't something he could have caught. It's something he needed to get in. In Colorado, it's probably a triple from the time it came off the bat, but you got to keep it from being a home run in a sense. You can't dog after it like what you're saying. And he went after it fine. I'm not saying anything about what he did, but I made the comment. It is so hard to play defense when a pitcher's out there struggling the way that he is, and you know he's going to continue. Like, you know that they're not going to make a move. You know that it's not going to get better. It is so difficult to go out there and do that. And I know they're pros. They're getting paid to do it. They should be able to do it. But in the game, dude, it ain't no different than when you and I were playing. Like, they're going to feel the same way. And that inning ended with Olivares making that falling or diving play, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he had to go down for it. And right. It showed me, like, even though it's difficult, like, that's what you want to see. Listen, I know that you're getting crushed and that diving catch doesn't mean anything in the game. But it is that effort that he still put in, and I was like, I appreciate that. I think Greg Brown was a little over the top with it, but
Greg tends to get a little carried away during those. The personal battling someone's doing in a blowout game. Like, yeah, yes, but I get your point. I get your point,
and it goes to that. Like, don't he could have let that drop because of it, and that would have been like, come on, man, you gotta still go out there and play hard. And right. I felt like like I said, I wasn't saying that it felt like it was a mile away because he wasn't. I was making a comment. I've been in that position. I know how difficult it is when a pitcher's out there just getting rocked. Especially, well, maybe not, but you could probably answer this as more of because you played first, right? So you would have been
all
an
my
infielder.
life into college. Yes, sir.
So I was in the outfield once by the time I got to high school and then through. And I don't like in anything I play infield and softball, but it's totally different game. So I don't compare the two. But I know in the outfield when they're just peppering the gaps, man, like, you never run less hard. Sometimes it feels like you're not. It feels like you're in slow motion, but it's so exhausting when they're getting shelled and you got to keep. And it's just like, man, this is.
It's interesting. I think at first base, you have to stay a little bit more in it. there's still stuff going on, right? Like you still have to hold runners on. You still have pickoff plays. You still have things that you are paying attention to that might keep you more involved in the game,
Sure.
or otherwise you might get killed. So I do think that was just maybe a benefit to playing there, which is even in games where you are getting your rear end handed to you, you have no choice but to still be completely actively involved because of the carousel that is going on around you. So whereas in the outfield, Josh, you know this, you might any type of game, you might stand there all day and not get a ball. So different apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But yes. So anyways.
Ron Heichel says at some point the Bucks need a 5 or 6 game winning streak. They'll lose one, win. What is it? 1 lose, win 2, lose. I think we get what he's saying here. Is just
You got to put some. You got to.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: as far as the and this will be the last thing. We'll close with this. You guys can look up the Red stuff. We won't make time for that. But going forward, when you're looking at the rest of this season and you look at this team, and I think this team is still a pretty good team. And this goes back to the complaints that we make. When I see posts about year 5 and this is what we're watching, sometimes that gets annoying. Year 5 is supposed to be right around 500 in the blueprint. I've said it over and over and over again. Year 5 is not a World Series year in a rebuild the way that they're doing it. And so it's not something I expect. As a matter of fact, I picked them to win 78 games. They're kind of like right around that kind of a ball team. But
I think I had them at 79. So yeah.
So when I watch this and I'm like, I'm taking this in stride in a way because I'm saying, and I want to know what you think of this, because when I look at this team and I see, well, there's things that are good, there's things that are obviously, I think there's more playing bad than there is the players are bad. And when I look at this pitching staff, I'm not going to make the time to pull it up right now, but I believe our longest winning and losing streak is around 5 or 6. Which is what he even said. And I would say that this team is probably more likely to go on a 6, or let's put the number at 10. I would say that this team is more likely to win 10 games in a row than they are to lose 10 games in a row. And I'm basing that primarily off of Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, and Jared Jones and Bailey Falter, really even. But let's talk just Keller and Skeens will stop that from going to 10, I think. They're each going to get 4 attempts at that. And I think that this team could go on. I mean, they'll have to change the way they're playing to go on a 10-game winning streak, surely. But I just think that they're more poised to do that than to go on big losing streaks because of the pitching.
Well, they have a couple. I mean, essentially, they have a couple stoppers, right? Like guys that can stop that stuff from happening. I think Josh, here's the thing. I think they've lost. They had a 5-game losing streak, and then they had a 6-game losing streak, if memory serves.
I'm looking it up, so go ahead, and then I'll tell you.
Yeah, those are the killers, right?
Yeah.
They started out well. How many did they win out of their first 10? Were they 8-2, 7-3, like somewhere in there? It just feels like to me like they just need one more stretch to get back to heads above water.
Yeah.
And if they can get that, or even if they take 5 of 7, anything like that, just the biggest issue is it's hard for them to string together the wins because the offense just isn't consistent enough to give them a chance every night. And then they bottom out for a game or two, and then they seem to be right back to square one.
Yeah.
So, but I do think they could just get, and I think that 9 of their next 15 games are divisional games between the Reds and the Cardinals. Look, all these games are important coming up, but 9 of 15, if you're going to start playing some good baseball, now would be the time to do it.
Yeah.
I just like I said, give me a 5 of 7 or a 6 of 9 type winning streak where you can just and get your head back above water and then see how you do.
Yeah.
But it's like they just can't seem to get to that point.
Five game winning streak was to start the season.
Okay.
And then they did have a 6-game losing streak from April 15th to April 21st.
Okay.
And, not much of a streak since May 11th.
Right. Yeah. So I agree, though. I do think, was it Ron that was saying is it's just at some point you got to string some wins together to make it easier on yourself. Yeah. It's hard to do it. It's hard to do it complete long haul, small increments, like get a chunk back. And then like the Reds have just done that, right? Yeah. The Reds went and won, I think it was 7 of 9, or just like we were talking about.
They're the polar opposite of that sort of season. If you look at them, I mean, their longest winning streak, I guess it's only 7. Their longest losing streak is 8. I thought they had even a longer of both, but I feel like they're very streaky. So I think they've done that a couple times. I mean, that longest winning streak was, just from June 2nd to June 8th. So I mean, and they can do that. The Pirates they're a sweep away from being 500. You know what I'm saying? And so exactly what you're saying, they could do something like that and kind of get themselves above. But they're going to have to do it against divisional opponents, which, if the division's down, maybe you should. Losing that series to the Cardinals, not good. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you go from there, but yeah, I mean,
and I don't know. And Josh, I don't know how the Brewers are doing it. There's 12, 13 games over 500. I'm almost writing them off at this point as nobody else. Are they catchable? I guess maybe they're not 15 games up on everybody, but I don't see. I've solely at this point thinking that they might have already given themselves a really, really great chance of winning the division.
They are very, I bet internally there's some surprise there. I think that they thought this was going to be, they were in a good position to have kind of a waiting year because WAD, because I feel like they were going to have a bunch of young guys coming up. And I felt like that they were just saying okay, we've got Burns. I mean, they dealt Burns. They actually already did it. They had Burns. They had the back end guy with the changeup,
Devin Williams,
and they have Willie Adames. And I was like, they could flip this thing. They could have one down year and flip this thing up. And if those young guys play well, they're right back in it the very next year because of what they could trade and what they could get in those trades. And then they all showed up and they're playing well. And Yelich all of a sudden
Devin Williams hasn't played.
Right, he's been hurt.
Yes. So I agree. I went into this year thinking they didn't even really know what they were fully on board with this year. I think that they have Jackson Churio. I don't know what he's doing, but obviously it's something.
It's been a mixed bag, but he's been fine.
He's super talented. Young guy. I wish we had him, but I've almost conceded the division to them just simply because I don't know if anybody else can string together enough wins to catch them.
Yeah.
But so it's a shame because I fully expected everybody to be in the same group. It only took one team to get their act together a little bit, and the Brewers have done it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Bucko Mike says Joey Ortiz has been great, and that's one of those guys they got in the Corbin Burns return, showed up, and that was kind of what I thought they would do, but it happened much faster than what I thought it was going to happen. And so, I mean, dude, that's why they play the games. You can't do this stuff on paper. That's why they play them. Anyway, like I said, I'm not super depressed about this team. I want them to do well. They're not playing as well as I think they could, but they're pitching way better than I thought they would. So it's kind of evened out in a way as far as that goes. The day in, day out stuff, obviously you want it to be better, but I think that this is what this team was going to be. I think it still gets better from here. Obviously, the thing to watch is those guys, the Jones and the Skeens and their innings and what they're able to give us down the stretch. But let this thing play out. We're in it. Stay in it. And if somehow you can create a little bit of magic when it comes time, I think this team could, like I said, if they stay in it, they would be poised to maybe make a move to, I want to say bullpen moves should happen regardless. But as far as like an offensive piece or something to try to push something over the edge, I think that they could be in that place. I don't need them to be. I'm not selling the farm for it. If this season was going to be what I think this season was going to be, somewhere between 78 and 83 wins, and they just miss, I think we're in really good shape. And so I don't know. I guess that's just where I'm.
Well, that's where me and you thought they would be. So, but only thing I will say, the caveat I will add to that is, if there was something that they could make a move this year that had benefits past this year, and you had to give some things up to do it. Now, selling the farm, I'm not there, but even if you had to give up a big piece or two because you were going to get an impact type player and it was going to give you 3 or 4 years of control for that, that would merge right into next year and the year after that, I'm listening to that. I would still be on board with that.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. Jim, thanks for coming on. Thanks for chatting with me. I always enjoy it, man.
Hey, listen, this was a great show to be on. I appreciate you giving us the inside scoop on the catching situation. And happy Father's Day again, everybody. It's the most important job we have as men if you are a dad. So happy Father's Day.
Yeah, happy Father's Day. All right, let's get out of here. Let's go Bucks.
Thanks for listening to my dad and Uncle Jake on the Bridge to Buctober podcast. Follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bridge2Buctober. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when new episodes are released. Clear the deck, cannonball coming, and let's go Bucks!